Ah, my intrepid explorers of the unknown. George Booza here, the voice of Beast from X-Men, the animated series in X-Men 97. Oh, my stars and garters, an adventure awaits at the Uncanny Experience. We're commandeering the Minneapolis Club this September 28th and 29th, metamorphosing it into the Grand Xavier Institute. Join us for a symposium of panels, a mutant marketplace, esteemed celebrity meet and greets, an illustrious cosplay contest, the exclusive Hellfire Club, all followed by the after party in the mansion. Procure your tickets at theuncannyexperience.com. Together, let's leap into the boundless realms of imagination and knowledge. Get your tickets now at theuncannyexperience.com.
Bum bum bottom 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 bum bum doobie doobie da 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 doobie doobie da 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 doobie doobie da 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 bum bottom bum bum doobie doobie da 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 doobie doobie da 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 doobie doobie da 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 bum bottom bum bum bottom ba da 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 You are now in session with the Comic Book Couples Counseling Podcast. I'm Lisa Gullickson.
And I'm Brad Gullickson.
And each month we evaluate a different iconic romance within the four-color realm. And in this episode, our homeland, San Diego Comic-Con, is nothing but embers. I've been meditating myself into a snail. Brad's been working out a lot and insists his right hand is stronger than his left, only because it's imbued with the magic of the gods.
That's the only reason.
Only one of us can be the golden one in our creator corner. We're unwinding yarns with Wes Craig discussing his hit Image comic series, Kaya.
We're finally unpacked from San Diego. We still have a lot of laundry to do.
As per usual.
But I was reminiscing about the convention with my father today. He gave a call, and he was asking, like, what was your favorite thing from San Diego Comic-Con? And several people have messaged us and said, like, what was the thing from San Diego Comic-Con? And I think you would agree with me that the great thing about San Diego Comic-Con and cons of this size is that there is never just like one great thing.
Yeah.
Right? I had to, for my father, drag him through all the various toy booths that I loved, right? Like going over to NECA and taking photos of all the great new upcoming Ninja Turtles toys, the Mezco booth, the Hasbro booth. And that is one thing that you don't necessarily enjoy at all.
I pretended. I've taken so many photos of action figures and statues. I've gotten my technique pretty well down. You touch your iPhone to the glass to avoid the glare. You want to put it at kind of a jaunty angle for a little pizzazz.
Pretend you're Kenneth Branagh, go Dutch.
But honestly, it is the most soporific activity. And I think one of my, it's not my favorite thing, my favorite change to San Diego Comic-Con, but I could not be more grateful that there's not an enormous sideshow collectibles booth that I have to walk through for hours and hours taking pictures of photorealistic statues, because it's boring. And then Brad also is right behind me retaking the photos I just took, doing better versions of it. And it hurts my feelings, and why do I do it? So now I just watch Brad take photos of all of the action figures, and while I try to stifle yawns and think my own thoughts.
And I appreciate that. And our social media following appreciates that, because they do liking all those photos from all those booths.
Well, you're welcome.
But my father also could not care less about me talking about the new Berserker McFarlane figure. Oh my gosh, there's two versions. Face melted and face not melted.
I'm going to say a controversial thing. I also don't see the point of taking pictures of animals at the zoo. I've gone to the zoo. I love the zoo. I love animals. Have I ever looked back at those pictures and gone, I remember that toucan?
Well, I think that's, we haven't gone to a zoo in a long time. But I think that's the difference between us, because I am the person who does go back through the photographs and look at that lion photo.
That is a great lion photo. I know the one you're talking about, and it is
so
great.
Good. But like you, my dad refused to believe that activity is actually fun, so he pushed further, and he's like, no, seriously, what's like the most favorite thing that you did that involved other humans? And I think my answer is probably the same as your answer, and how could it not be?
Yeah.
Brad and Lisa moderated the Focus on Maria Bamford and Scott Marvel Cassidy panel for Fantagraphics.
And it was the coolest thing ever. I could not be more proud of how that panel went. Okay, let me say the things I'm grateful for in order. I can't believe we were asked to do it.
Right.
I can't believe that we did it. And it's impossible to believe how well it went. And yet it went beautifully, and I am stoked.
But it did not go off without a hitch.
It did not go to plan.
Right. And, we talked about this during our Jason Aaron conversation that we dropped on Monday, but we had overscheduled ourselves this Comic-Con. And one of the things that we were most stressed about was executing a great panel for Maria and Scott. And we weren't sure if we were going to have a lot of time to prepare for it. We didn't have a lot of time before the convention, so we really had to do it the night of.
Right.
Which is exactly
the night
what
before.
Which is exactly what we ended up doing. We locked ourselves in our hotel room. We broke out our notebooks. We came up with our questions. We took several hours to structure the panel to our liking. And we got up super early so we could be at the convention center before anyone else.
Yeah.
Here's the problem. They weren't letting anyone into the convention center
in any kind of organized fashion.
Yeah, and we had press badges, but the press badge people had to line up with general admittance, which I'm fine with.
In most cases,
but our panel was at 10 a.m., and now by the time we got to the convention center, we're getting closer to 10 a.m., we're really getting closer to 9 a.m.
Right.
And the line to get into the convention center looked a lot longer than 1 hour, right? So we were talking to somebody, they're like, well, we can't guarantee that you're going to get in by 10 a.m.
Yeah.
And then we started freaking out. Thankfully, our buddy Eamon Winkle, the artist behind the Principles of Necromancy, walked by with his professional badge, and they would let him in with a professional badge. So we rode behind him, but they still said we had to go check in with the press desk. But once we were in the building, we were in the building. So we just went off to room 4 and set up. And we did get there with plenty of time to prepare.
We didn't have any slides or anything. All we really had to do was just kind of acclimate to the size of the room and just kind of go back and forth with the questions that we were going to ask and just kind of process some of that anxiety. But people started coming in and sitting down
almost immediately.
Pretty early.
Yeah, the second we went in, other people followed behind us.
I had no idea how many people would actually come.
Yeah, it's 10 a.m. It's Friday morning.
And Maria Bamford is a celebrity person. She's had a Netflix show. She is beloved, but she's also kind of specific, And I go well, how much of the Venn diagram of Comic-Con comic book people overlap with Maria Bamford fans? I had no idea. But those people showed up, and they were people who knew Maria and knew her work.
Yeah.
And, of course, I start going around the room introducing myself to people because I'm I don't know what to do because I feel like I'm hosting this room, but it's just being weird.
And 10 o'clock rolls around, and, no Maria, no Scott.
We check our email, and we just see right at the top, subject line, we're lost.
And now the room is pretty full, and none of them are there to see us.
Yeah. Brad takes his phone and breaks into a run, and you leave.
Yeah, they didn't have their badges. They were they're not letting us inside. We're at Seagate. And I'm okay, time to go bully Maria Bamford and Scott Marvel Cassidy into the convention center. I could do this.
And I'll just entertain the crowd and vamp until you guys show up.
And so I go down there. I cannot find either of them.
You're wearing a suit jacket.
I have a blazer on. It's so hot. And I take they didn't know what I looked like. I mean, they'd seen us through a Zoom room, but Like a Zoom room's not a great photo of Brad. So I take another selfie of myself. I email it to Scott and Maria, and then they email us back and say, well, Lauren from Fantagraphics got us. We're inside and on our way up. So then I run.
But they have to get their badges first.
Right. They have to go to the booth, get their badges, and then they're going to meet us up in room 4. So then I run up back to room 4. No escalator, straight stairs. Again, blazer on. By the time I get back to room 4, I am a slick of sweat. But I walk into that room to laughter. Lisa has people laughing.
Yeah.
And I took this great photo of Lisa as if she was teaching a kindergarten class.
Yeah. You guys know how much I love plans. And I had no plan for what if Maria and Scott were late. So I just went up to the front and I was like, hi, I'm Lisa from Comic Book Couples Counseling. Maria is running late. And then they all titter because they're all her fans. And if you know her, you know that a lot of things in her life don't go to plan.
It was very on brand.
It was very on brand. Weakness is the brand. I just started going like, so what do you want to talk about? And luckily somebody in the front goes, what's the book about? And I was like, dude, I got you. So I was like literally like going through the book.
Hogbook and Laser Eyes.
Hogbook and Laser Eyes. That's right, from Fantagraphics. And I was like going through and pointing out their dogs. And I was showing off. I was wearing the merch. I was wearing the Bert's dancing like Michael Flatley, arms akimbo. And I was like, where can you get this shirt? At the Fantagraphic booth, booth number 1721. And then I led them in a chant. I say 17, you say 21.
And that's when I came back to the room, huffing and puffing, again, a slick of sweat.
Oh, you skipped the part where you called.
Oh, yeah, because I called. I said, they're not here. They're going to get there hopefully soon.
Yeah,
I don't
you got
know.
a lot of laughs. You couldn't hear.
Good. I'm glad. Brian was there, our buddy Brian Young,
he got
snapping
pictures.
photos.
He got pictures.
And, I got back to the room, still no Maria and Scott. And then I was like, Lisa, have you plugged Comic Book Couples Counseling to the room?
And I had not, because I'm a humble baby.
So we did that. And then Scott and Maria showed up to a round of applause.
And honestly, I think this is the best way that this could have happened. I'm sure it was very stressful. And they talked about it. In the panel, like how stressful it was for the both of them as a creative married couple in a stressful situation to get through a crowded place and, get things done. And, so I'm sure it was very stressful for them. But for me to be up there and to just kind of like get comfortable, independent of my hero, Maria Bamford, was like so good, that I could establish some kind of like rapport and get a little bit comfortable. I was crazy
proud of you.
Me too.
I walk back into room 4 and you have the entire room's attention and, you're flipping through this book, doing a call and response with the Fantagraphics booth. I snapped this great photo of you alone on the stage. I love that photo so much. It was a perfect moment despite the stress and anxiety of it.
Right.
It felt like a little victory.
It was a little victory. And like for me personally, I'm a person who gets scared about a lot of stuff. And most of the stuff is pretty irrational. I did have a panic attack at Disneyland. We can talk about it another time. But like, I do have the experience of like my emotions just betraying me. And they generally do it at times that don't matter very much. Mm-hmm, you know what I mean? But like the fear then becomes, okay, what if I get up in front of everybody and just start crying and can't stop? Like that's like a very real concern of mine. And, we had been guests on panels. We'd done the Ninja Turtles panel.
At New York, yeah.
At New York.
Last year, you were on the Beats Comics Journalism panel with Heidi McDonald.
And, I was really nervous for that. I was more nervous for that than this.
But you killed it.
But I did fine. I did really good. I did not cry and not stop in front of a room full of people. It's one thing to be scared for things that you don't want to do. I'm like a person who hates flying on airplanes, and I do get really sad and emotional. I'm also a person who, under certain circumstances, hates going to the doctor. There are a lot of things I want to do that I get really, really scared for. And I'm just so grateful that I get the opportunity to do those things. Like, I do want to be able to get up in front of people and be comfortable and talk and make people laugh and, all of that stuff. And I get it. And I can.
Sometimes it'll be harder than other times, right?
But this was easy.
But this was relatively easy.
This was easy and fun.
We had some challenges thrown our way, and, we rose to them, I felt like.
I'm really sad. To me, the only thing that I'm sad about is because I went up on my own, and I was just like vamping, I didn't think to hit record.
Yeah, I recorded it.
You recorded?
I recorded it once they got there.
Yeah,
so
how much do you think is cut off from the beginning of it?
Well, like all of your vamping's not a part of it, and maybe like 5 minutes of Maria and Scott's not on the audio. But I think what I'll do is just check to see that the audio is listenable, because, we did it really on the fly. I used
a Zoom recorder.
A Zoom recorder to record it.
But even just like personally, I want the recording.
Yeah,
even if it's like not like
But I also may put it on the Patreon feed.
We'll see. We'll see. Because I do want you guys to hear it. And it was a really good chat. We talked way longer about dog grief than I thought was appropriate, but we got through it. There's a lot of dog death.
Yeah.
A lot of dog death. And it went really good. Yeah. The feedback we've gotten has been really warm and wonderful. And maybe some of you are now listening to this podcast because you were at that panel, and I appreciate you. And hopefully you went back and listened to our original, the conversation that got us the gig, our original interview about Hogbook and Laser Eyes with Marie and Scott, because that was a really special conversation.
Throw a link to that in the show notes of this episode.
Thank you, my sweetheart. You're my favorite.
Also, in the link section of this episode, you'll find links to previous San Diego Comic-Con conversations. We did one with Gail Simone talking about the 2000 AD special Misty. We also spoke with Jason Aaron about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #1. That's a full spoilers conversation. And this Friday, we will be dropping another episode. Yes, that's 3 Comic Book Couples Counseling episodes this week. This Friday's episode is going to be with Joey Esposito and Sean Von Gorman talking about their new series, The Pedestrian, which just came out today.
And it's so good. Are we transitioning out? Are we transitioning out of my magic moment with Maria and Scott?
Yes, Lisa, because I think most new listeners who came to this episode did not care to hear about our magic moment at San Diego Comic-Con.
Get your own podcast.
They came here to listen to Wes Craig talk about his series Kaya, which is incredible.
And I was sleeping on it.
Yeah.
It was one of your referrals.
It was.
So many weeks back. And
I would say months ago.
You were like, it's an all ages Conan. And I was like, I'm out. But no, it is it's all of the things that don't initially attract me. Like it's a fantasy book. It's an action book, but it is also a real magical family find your purpose kind of book. And that is in fact my jam.
Like, to me, it sort of tracks some of the themes that Chris Samnee and Laura Samnee were exploring in Jana and the Impossible Monsters, but then takes it a little bit further. Mm-hmm. And Wes Craig also kind of has a style similar to Chris Samnee. I think they both owe a lot to Alex Toth. But Wes Craig has a very different paneling style than Chris Samnee.
It's not like we're even comparing them. We're just saying we know a lot of you love Jana. You will also love Kaya.
Yeah, I think they're not necessarily in conversation with each other, but they share a lot of thematic blood.
And they're compatible. Like I loved thinking about Jana and Rainbow, and now I love thinking about Kaya and Jin. I love stories about siblings.
Right. And so the title character, Kaya, is looking after her little brother, Jin, after their village has been eradicated by a robot army, basically.
And they both had very different upbringings because Jin was supposed to be the golden one, the chosen one of their community, and his purpose is to defeat the robot people who are taking over the world. And Kaya has been raised as a hunter, as a warrior, and she has had it made clear to her, that she is less special than Jin.
But
her purpose is to protect and care for Jin because he is important and he knows it.
Yeah, he's bought into the faith, and Kaya at the start of this story has turned away from their village's faith.
Yeah,
right?
she's much more skeptical.
And there is I don't want to spoil too much, although I think we kind of spoil quite a bit in this conversation.
So we are like barreling into that, like what we're promoting is issue 20, which is coming out soon and is supposed to serve as a jumping on point for people who weren't reading Kaya already. So, I mean, if you want to stop the podcast and read 19 issues right now, you are like welcome to do so. You will not regret it.
You
it
can
is truly
also
beautiful.
Go to your comic book store and see if they have the pamphlet that Image Comics printed that does a recap of the first 3 trade paperbacks. So you can read that pamphlet, which is what? Let's see, I've got it right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 pages, catches you up on Kaya, and then you can jump into issue 20.
So I think we can spoil some stuff right now because
Okay.
we've put the cushion for the conversation.
We do think it's an incredible comic book, like one of the best books being published right now. And I think the fact that Lisa loves it as much as she does, despite it trading in some tropes that she doesn't normally connect with, it being a journey, a quest story, fantasy, that kind of thing. Lisa, famously not a fan of Lord of the Rings. I said it.
Swords are boring.
I think the fact that you still really engaged with this book talks about how strong the emotional core of the comic is, and also how radically beautiful Wes Craig's art is and sequentially is in this comic. And we're not the only ones saying what an incredible book Kaya is. I mean, Daniel Warren Johnson has spoken about it. Robert Kirkman has spoken about it. David Harper over at Sketched has praised it up and down. And we're just adding to that cacophony. And for selfish reasons, we want more people on Kaya because Wes Craig has some pretty large plans for this book, and we want to see his dreams come true because those dreams are our dreams.
Our conversation starts by talking about the big promises Wes Craig has made about Kaya. He is promising his readers, come hell or high water, he is finishing this story. And like as a reader, like selfishly, I want that to happen. I'm genuinely curious. I'm genuinely invested. And part of the reason I'm invested is the fact that this is a culmination of everything that Wes Craig wanted to do as a kid. He has wanted to be a cartoonist. He wanted to be a writer-artist. And that introspection, that aspiration, that passion is just like popping off the page. It is so infectious and evident in this story.
Kaya is one of those rare comics where it's a person too. It's Wes Craig too.
Right. Yeah. And it's a story about faith, finding faith in the universe, finding faith in yourself, finding faith in the ones you love, and how that kind of faith can be a beautiful thing, but it can also be a dark thing, and it can be a scary thing. There is a part of me that has calloused over when it comes to stories about chosen ones, because it's the kind of thing where, like, you know, I don't relate to it. I don't feel like a chosen one. I don't feel like the hero of my own story, and I'm like freaking happy about it. I'm just like, wow, I'm really glad that nothing in the universe depends on me.
Oh, we remember that conversation you had with Patton Oswalt.
Yeah. The doubt that Jin carries, the skepticism that Kaya carries, and the fact that even when the prophecy begins coming together, they both find really good reasons to not believe in it. And they still make incredibly human foibles and mistakes.
Yeah, it's so good.
It's just so good.
It's so good. So please, if you haven't already read Kaya, do so.
Catch up.
Jump on with issue 20, which is out today from
Yay!
Image Comics. And if you have read Kaya, then join us around the campfire for this epic conversation with Wes Craig. Wes, welcome to Comic Book Couples Counseling. Hello.
Hello, how's it going?
It is going well. We're recovering from San Diego Comic-Con. We're missing San Diego Comic-Con, but thankfully we have you here to continue the comic celebration.
I'm glad to be here. Did you guys catch anything? Did any crud or COVID or anything
How
else?
dare you ask?
Like if
Okay.
longtime listeners can tell maybe from my voice that it's a little more hoarse than usual, that's all the evidence you need to know.
Would.
Brad got the con crud.
Yeah.
I'm fine.
Yeah.
Which proves that I'm stronger. Maybe I'm the chosen one. We don't know.
It's
Yeah.
possible.
Crud is part of the game. It is what it is, but it's like as long it just depends on the recovery time. Because yeah, it's always you come back and you go, I used to just always make the same mistake of putting in my schedule of like, okay, first day back from San Diego or New York or whatever, I'm gonna finish a page on Monday. And it's like, no, that never happens. Like you feel excitement, but also burnout at the same time. It's a weird experience coming back from a con. It's so much excitement and meeting people and just talking all day. And then it's a weird took me and my brother have done a bunch of cons together, and it's taken us a lot of time to realize like you're just going to be a little bit sad the first day or two. Like that's just part of the kind of ups and downs of it. Like it's weird to go from talking to people all day to going back to just your little office where you're just drawing all by yourself like for the entire day, and then maybe the family comes home at the end of the day or whatever. But yeah, it's like riding that wave the first few days and then getting back into a normal groove after that.
Yeah. Thankfully, Lisa and I have learned that, and we have put into our schedule some recovery time.
We're
Yeah.
also our own bosses, and also we make poor financial decisions. So
Yeah.
it all comes together.
We're dirt poor right now. Let's not talk about it.
Back to teaching piano lessons on Monday.
Thank God. Thank God. Wes, like one of the things that excites us about Kaya is the fact that you're telling a long story, and you were committed to telling a longer form story from the beginning. But of course, there are financial challenges to telling a long form story in comics. And I'm wondering if you could explain the impulse to tell a longer form story and also the reality of telling a longer form story, how that's working out for you.
Yeah, it's like this story that I worked on it while I was drawing Deadly Class for quite a few years. This is one of the main things that I was breaking down and just building up the world in my mind and breaking it into issues and all this stuff as we got closer to the end of Deadly Class. I was like, I don't want to wait. I don't want to take a break. My name recognition, like just on the business side of things, is like as high as it's ever been, as high as it's potentially gonna get. So it's like I don't want to just like throw that aside and come out a year later. So it's like literally like the same month the last issue of Deadly Class came out, like the first issue of Kaya came out, like it was like right away. And it's just when I was creating the idea, it wasn't, longer series were more of a thing. Like it was more of a, at the time I was making it, there was, Saga is still going strong, but there were, I'm trying to think of like good examples of Sex Criminals and Wicked and Divine and longer, not crazy long, but longer form series were more of a doable thing. And in the recent years, it's been more like just as you know, it's like miniseries are more the trend right now, and it's just kind of hard to keep it going and stuff. But it's just for better or worse, that's how I pictured it, and it's a story I wanted to tell for many years. So it's like I just have to make this work somehow. So that's basically just kind of screwed myself over with that, where I'm just like I gotta make this thing work, and um, keeping it monthly, and I just yeah, it's like it's almost like a point of pride right now because I feel like not to trash anybody else. Everyone's doing what they feel financially works and creatively works, and a lot of these things do. Most of my other ideas that I have for comics are a much shorter series. It's just Kaya just happens to be that it for me. It doesn't work unless it's like a long epic, like a Lone Wolf and Cub or something else, where it takes a few years to tell the whole story. And that just yeah, it makes me just have to be very like have to think of that business aspect more, and like all the little pieces where it's like I try to keep the page count to like 24 page. It's like in print, this is really inside baseball stuff, but it's like the minutia of it is like the printing of comics, it goes in 8-page increments and stuff. So it's like either 24 pages or the next one up is 32 pages. So it's like, but then you're printing more pages and that costs more at the printer. All these little things that it doesn't seem much in issue by issue, but overall it adds up to trying to save a little bit of money. That's more money for the creative team, etc. Hopefully just stretching it as thin as I can to keep this going, because I'd like it to be like 8 trade paperbacks worth, which is not super far away, but it's still a ways away. And so the single issues still have to be if not, eventually they won't be profitable, but at least not taking a loss, at least like helping me to pay the creative team and stuff like that. So yeah, so there's like tough decisions in that way in terms of like cutting corners where you can, but not cutting any corners that mess with the story or anything like that. Like just making it as a fulfilling an experience for the reader as possible. But it's like there's little things you can do to kind of try to keep the, like it's running a company. It's like keeping the costs down, trying to maximize the profit, or if there is a profit, rolling that into the next thing, etc. Yeah, yeah. So you got to be business minded about it to keep it going, I think.
I know that in preparing for this interview and doing my research, that your being a writer artist is the fulfillment of your childhood dream and the ideal that you were really going for.
For sure.
And like being the golden one, right? When you come and you find, oh my goodness, I'm fulfilling my dream. Oh, and I'm doing it. And I'm still a human being with human being problems and hurdles and all of that stuff.
Mhm.
Are there moments where you go like, I'm really doing it, I became a snake today? And are there things where it's just like, yeah, I'm doing it, but am I really doing it? You know what I mean? Like, is this what I expected it to be? Is it fulfilling to me?
Or I'm a snake today and I want to be a dragon,
Yeah.
but I have to settle for being a snake.
Yeah, that's a tough question in a weird way because of its weirdness. It's turning out exactly the way that I was hoping it would. I mapped out the series when I was doing Deadly Class, and like in broad strokes and stuff, so I know where I'm going with it. I'm not the kind of person that can just kind of like fly by the seat of their pants or whatever, or make it up on the fly. Like, so it's like I generally know the map of where I'm going. And it is turning out that way, and it's cool to see like story elements that I was like, oh, in book number 4, this is when I get to this part, and like finally like that happened, and I get to introduce this character and stuff. Um, what is the one thing that's tough about it is like it's a monthly book, and that monthly deadline, once in a while, I'm like, I wish I could take another. It's not going to be perfect. At the end of the day, this is like the best book I can do, considering that it's a monthly book with a monthly deadline. Like there are going to be little pieces where when I read it back again, the previous trade, I'll be like, I didn't catch that thing. That dialogue or that scene doesn't match up with this as well as I would like. And, like, but at the same time, you can fiddle with those things until you're dead, until there is no book that you ever made. But, like there is no perfection. It's just doing the best job that you can in the moment and in the time that you have, which is kind of how that's how I think of Kaya. It's like it's a monthly book, so it's not going to be perfect, but it's just it's my best effort at a monthly given the monthly deadline.
There's a beautiful poetry to that, though, where you go like, okay, I'm a writer artist. I have total control over that thing.
Mhm.
What can I do to make this thing go on as long as possible? Oh, is it to deliver a book monthly?
Mhm.
And we're not actually in service of my story. I'm actually still in service to the reader, in service to the people. So even like when you are the golden one, you have to, the whole point is that you are a person of service, and you're trying to create readers and create people and better people's lives through your work, I guess.
Yeah, that's something I think about a lot, actually. I used to just be like, you're an artist and you create this thing just for yourself, and which is obviously you do have to like think of yourself first, but it's also kind of like a weird conversation in a way where it's kind of like if you're just, like this has to be for there's an audience reading this comic, and it's a weird conversation because it's kind of like they don't necessarily, except for a letters column or whatever, they don't get to answer back necessarily. There's not a lot of back and forth, but it is kind of like you are putting it out there for an audience to read, not just for your own satisfaction. So
You
yeah,
do seem concerned about the medium, though, and you look at the backup of your latest issue, 19, and you've done this before, but like you're talking to kids. Hey, if you want to make comics, this is how you do it. Here's a step-by-step guide on how to
Yeah.
make a kid comic or a comic kid. Where does that energy come from?
That actually started from literally this guy that I knew in high school that now when I go to this coffee shop around the corner to do I drop one of my kids off at daycare and then I go maybe for an hour and I do some writing. That's mostly how Kaya was built slowly but surely. And now I'm working on future arcs of Kaya and also some other ideas for potentially for other artists to draw. And now this guy that I knew in high school, he works at a bike shop like on the next building over. So we talk once in a while and his kid is like 13 and he's a fan of Chainsaw Man, and like he's got into it with manga, starting to sample some American stuff, and they had this idea that they wanted to turn into a comic and they didn't know how. So the dad, he came to me and asked me like, do you think you can give him some pointers? And it just ended up being kind of an essay. And I was like, oh, this could be kind of cool, like something to kill two birds with one stone. I can do this for this individually for this one kid, and then also just kind of send it out to whoever. And I know how important that was to me when I was a kid, like any information that I could find. There's like this one random Star Wars comic, and I never bought Star Wars comics, and I don't even know how I knew. Maybe it was just by chance, but I literally, it's the only Star Wars comic that I own, but in the back of it has like how to submit your samples to Dark Horse or whatever,
Yeah.
like any and all, like any Wizard magazines when I was a kid that said like this is how you get into comics, or any information was appreciated for me. So I try to tap into that and try to think of some of the stuff that I thought was super, because it is supposed to be a comic that's relatively all ages, like it's a bit more, there's some action, some violence and stuff, but I don't think there's anything in there that's gonna like scar a kid to look at, unlike my Deadly Class work, which is like
Yeah.
for adults. So yeah, so I think of the kid that I was when I was reading those comics and what I would have enjoyed and what fun things to put in there that I thought would be that I would have thought would be really cool when I was a kid. And yeah, that's one of them.
Brad and I are huge fans of all ages comics for a few reasons. One, they make new readers, and we love this medium so much. We want it to go on forever. But also, I feel like when you're telling an all ages story, you get to wear your heart on your sleeve just a little bit more. You get to putting your ideals on the page is kind of like not cheesy. It's kind of like
Yeah.
optimistic. Are there other things you've really embraced about writing all ages, or is like the idea of all ages just like, oh, it's another set of like fun guardrails that this is what people expect and blah, 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 like something along that line?
Yeah, I like to kind of, yeah, it's kind of, you're telling like a fable, like there's an aspect of Kaya, it sounds a little hoity-toity or something, but like an aspect of it is kind of inspired by like George Orwell's Animal Farm, where it's like you can read it as a kid and just enjoy it for the story, but then there's this other meaning, obviously, as you get older, you go, oh, okay, this is about the communist revolution, and like there, but if you're a kid reading that, you wouldn't necessarily pick up on it, but it would still be kind of an interesting story. So yeah, so that there is a bit of that kind of like it's just a fun adventure story, but then I can't help but put a little bit of my, my beliefs and my politics in there, in some way. Um, but yeah, that's another thing. Like when I was working on this, what's nice to see now is that it's not as much of a rarity as it was when I was first conceiving of this, because I think at the time that I first started coming with this idea, a big conversation in comics was just like everything's for adults. Like there's no kids comics anymore. And I was like, okay, so if I'm gonna make a comic, one of the things I want to do, I want to make something that it's a bit more, you can put it on the stands and it can be read by a kid and like they can get into comics. And by the time Kaya came out, it wasn't as big of a deal because there were a lot more things out there that were, it wasn't just Bone fighting the good fight for all of kids comics, like there at the time it was like that, and I don't know what else. It wasn't much going on. Everything was grim, dark stuff for adults.
So with Kaya, the exciting path that the two central characters have with Faith, and how the book starts off and Kaya believes Jin is not necessarily what Jin thinks himself to be, because at one point she was told that she was extremely special and then
Yeah.
her mom was wrong. But then by the end of the second trade paperback, she witnesses some things that encourage her faith in Jin. And then Jin at that point, he starts to question, well, Jin or where, well, Kaya's mom said she was special. My mom said I was special.
It's the same mom.
It's the same
Yeah.
mom,
Yeah.
and she was wrong. So what if she's wrong? She was wrong again.
Yeah.
And can you talk a little bit about the faith play that's happening in Kaya right now?
Yeah, there's definitely a little bit of probably it's a lot of it's like if you've read the Dune series or the movies or whatever, there's some similarities with that where it's like where's the line, you know? Like do you talk about this chosen one and that's what creates the chosen one almost, or is it fate, or is it, like I kind of play with a lot of questions about that stuff. And it's also like, yeah, like now Kaya is more of a true believer, but now in the most recent story actually kind of does some things where you're like, oh, but that's not good. Like, so it's like what happens to somebody when they become when they switch over from being a non-believer to a true believer. Maybe that make them a little bit too radical. Who knows, so there, yeah, like I was saying with the Animal Farm thing, it's a simple, fun story, but it's looking at a few little interesting kind of philosophical things like that. And yeah, there's going to be a lot of the chosen one is like kind of such a cliche in a lot of ways. And it's been done many times in many interesting ways, but also in not great ways. So, and like, what is that to be a one person it's like something I don't believe in really, a one person that saves everybody. It's like not a great idea. So it's interesting. It's kind of playing with those ideas, thinking about those ideas. Hopefully I land on something at the end that is satisfying, but also I don't know. I guess I can't really talk about that. It's a long ways off, but like I'm playing with a few different aspects of that, and hopefully I land somewhere that's satisfying, but also uh surprising.
For me, a really moving, penetrating part of the book is Jin encountering Varia's faith. And it really actually scares him, but also like goes like, okay, I have a face to someone who really believes in me.
Mhm.
And now I have this other set of expectation. So
Yeah.
this goes back to what you were saying about Kaya then doing things that uphold the truth if Jin is in fact the chosen one, but
Yeah.
not the ideal. Like it's important to save everyone. And the ideas of the compromises you have to make in order to rush towards a prophecy. Like, do you have to make the prophecy happen, or is the prophecy going to happen because it's the prophecy?
Yeah. 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 I don't, yeah, it's one of those, I'm like, yeah, I don't want to, it's like almost I don't want to settle on one answer, but it's just more just looking at different options throughout the story because that is one of the driving factors. Yeah, like okay, so the end result is potentially a better world, but does that mean you can just do whatever you want to reach that? Like do the ends justify the means, basically?
Right.
But it's like, are you allowed to do anything? And if you do anything you want to get to that goal, does the goal become so poisoned at the end because of all the things that all the bad decisions that you made? Is like does it just become like you don't want it anymore? So that's, yeah, a question to be answered, I think, in the course of the series.
My thing is, if I am ever prophesized of doing anything, like, don't tell me. Just keep that to yourself. Because I
Yeah.
feel like I have a greater chance of hitting the nail on the head by accident than trying to like reject it entirely, go like, that's ridiculous, and then go on with my life. Or go for the big swing and go like, okay, I'm the prophecy, so I'm gonna make it happen. And then like by trying too hard, just really giving it, just really whiffing. Like, isn't
Yeah.
being the chosen one or the fulfillment of a prophecy like the worst thing you can do to a child? That just ruins
Yeah,
their life.
for sure. It's like I try to relate that. It's such a big idea, but it's like you try to relate it to like something a bit more tangible in the real world. And I guess it's like, some kid scores like a super high IQ score, or they're they're a savant when it comes to like the piano or math or like this kind of or a child star or what whatever. Like these are things that can be they can ruin kids' lives potentially. Like how many of those kids that you hear about do actually grow up and become the thing they were supposed to become? It's like it's pretty rare. So like yeah, that's kind of like it's a heavy burden that Jin has. And he starts off in the beginning like even my my wife was like, I don't really like him anymore. You used to have him be a bit more kind of nice and you made him a bit more of a brat. And I was like, well, it just that's how the story went in my mind. And also it creates a bit more of a like an odd couple situation between Kaya and Jin where they're at odds. One's tough and one's a bit of a brat, but eventually they're going to learn from each other. But I think hopefully that's something that I'm kind of showing through the course of the series is that he's learning. He's not as much of a brat as he used to be. He's going through some hard knocks that are teaching him some stuff and he's got a heavy burden. It's like just save the world, kid, no problem. Like yeah, easy peasy.
I feel like I experience sometimes like oh man, I'm disappointing my mom in the smallest way. Like we were at the beach house. We were at a beach house. We don't have a beach house, but we rent one every 2 years and my whole family goes in there.
Nice.
And like I opened a beer for myself and because I wanted a beer and I was like, Brad, it's gonna be weird that I'm opening this beer. And Brad's like, what? Who cares? So I
Yeah.
open it and there comes my mom, like a specter over my shoulder, going like, I don't really think of my Lisa as drinking beer. Oh
Woo!
shit. You know what I mean? Like just those like tiny things where it's just like I'm really fulfilling my expectations right now and it's weird for both of us. And I'm like, I don't know. I feel like you're making it weird. But like something like one of the things that seems to really be stuck in your craw, at least story wise, is like a sense of entitlement. Like a lot of the characters that Jin and Kaya find themselves like coming up against are like, I'm pretty sure I'm supposed to be king. And it's just like, and it's not happening, and it's making me have feelings, and I'm doing bad things. You know what I mean? Like, is entitlement something that you think about all of the time, or is that just by telling the story of Kaya and of all of these like crumbling kingdoms? That's just what naturally comes from that kind of environment.
Yeah, there's like a mix of a few things. It's just there's stuff that it's like just it's go-tos in your mind where you're like, this kind of character is annoying. I want to talk about this character again. So again, with deadlines though, sometimes it's kind of like, oh, maybe I made this character a little bit too close in their
Mm,
desires or what. Like in the first I realized that that's what was happening in the mutant kingdom. There was a guy that should have been king, and then in the next arc in the Temple of Shazir, there's a guy who got to the throne by like making a deal with the robot empire and stuff. So it's like, oh, I think I'm kind of cycling through that idea of maybe a few too many times. But also at the same time, a lot of these subplots, these secondary plots, they are kind of reflections of Kaya and Jin's plot. It's like Kaya, like Jin's like learning about entitlement and being a king and this kind of stuff like from the things that he's seeing. So hopefully that teaches him some stuff along the way, like seeing like how not to do it. But yeah, no, for sure. That's kind of like entitlement is an easy to dislike character trait, I guess. Everybody has a certain amount of entitlement, but and also some of those things like it's almost like you're writing and writing and then some of the themes that you do in your writing, it's like you look at it afterwards and you go, oh, I guess that was about that. Like maybe I was just working through some psychological stuff and I didn't necessarily even, I don't, it's embarrassing to say because you want to always be in control of your story, but it's like some of these things you don't really realize that you're going to therapy a little bit as you're writing these things and you're working some stuff out in some way. Like I remember there was like when I was some of the writing that I did for myself when I was in my 20s. I won't go into the themes, but it's like later on, like in my late 20s, I look back and I was like, oh, I was definitely about that thing. I was trying to work out some of this early 20s stuff. So yeah, sometimes it's just things that you like to, it's just go-tos in your mind, and other times it's just like stuff that you realize you're obsessing about after the fact.
Well, I think that's the exciting thing about comics in particular, especially serialized comics, is that you can start to see some themes coming in subconsciously, and then you can
Yeah,
lean into them.
yeah, for sure. I mean, I see kind of like, yeah, I mean, like there's favorite writers that I think about, and it's, Grant Morrison, Alan Moore, like has this thing of like time as a flat circle is not just a theme that he addresses in Watchmen. It's like he literally like goes through this like over and over, and he's just so like so into this concept of time being kind of like looking at time as just one big thing. All of it has already happened. I don't, for any listeners that aren't don't know what I mean by the time as a flat circle thing, like looking at all of time as in like the future, the past, it's all just happened in one snap of the finger kind of. And so he's addressed that a bunch of times, and Grant Morrison's got his themes, and Frank Miller, and all my favorite people. Working with Rick Remender on Deadly Class, reading some of his other works, I was like, I see this is also in Deadly Class, but he's just doing a slightly different kind of refraction of this the same thing that he's kind of obsessing over, So yeah, everybody has it. So I kind of I say that to myself so I can forgive myself a little bit for repeating anything for repeating myself too many times.
Another theme from Kaya that I really love is the idea magic isn't as easy as snapping your fingers. This idea of, okay, if you have a talent or you have a gift, that doesn't mean that it's going to just be all downhill from there. Like when you find out, oh my goodness, this is what I'm on this planet to do, it doesn't mean that you're going to have that executing that thing is going to be simple.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think I just like I mean, for one thing, like introducing magic is a tricky thing as a writer because you don't want to do this thing where it's like, well, now any plot problem that you have, you just fix it with magic, and you got to make sure that there's like pretty strict rules on the magic that you use, or else it's just like or you don't want the reader to go, well, why didn't he just do this thing? And they could have gotten out of that really easily, which is a problem with Jin, which is but it also ties in with the idea that I have of magic is that yeah, it's like an extra like a it's like drilling for oil or something. It's like an extractive like you need to take from something else or take from yourself. There needs to be a sacrifice, basically old school style. There, to make magic happen, there has to be some form of sacrifice, whether it be yourself or Jin's going to learn more about what you can do to increase your magical powers and stuff over the course of the next book or two. And that, yeah, that helps make it so that it's like, well, yeah, he can turn into a dragon for a second, but then he's drained and he can't, he's passed out, and he's basically, kind of like one of the things that I think about is why can't he just turn into a dragon and fly him and Kaya to like their destination that they're trying to get to? So therefore, it's like that's one of those things where it's like, well, it's not as easy as that. That would basically the the ability he has with his magic right now that would kill him, like or so that's not really a possibility. Like he could be a little sparrow if he wants for a while, and that doesn't take too much energy. But the more he kind of more magic he puts out, the more the tougher it is on his body and his mind and stuff. Yeah.
And also the presumption that because he is the golden one, every time he uses magic, it's like this right thing to do. You've introduced kind of this specter over his magic, this demon inside his magic that he's afraid of accessing or letting out, or like going like, oh, maybe this is the thing that's controlling my magic, and it's inherently like a bad thing. How did you come across having such an idea that, oh goodness, my prophesized magic is actually maybe connected to this really dark thing?
Yeah, I mean, it was quite a while ago, but I think it's kind of got something to do with, again, like not really, Dune wasn't like this big, huge influence, but I realized some parallels and stuff, and it's like being the chosen one, having powers, it kind of lets loose something that maybe you can't control, like or I'm trying to, historical versions of like the Crusades or something like that. Like they did it because they thought it was a good reason. They had to get back the Holy Land, but then things spin out of control, and then there's just terrible things that are happening, and you're displacing people. Like some things, some movements that might start off as a as a good thing get out of control and end up being the opposite of what you envision them to be. So it's a little bit like a physical manifestation of that, where it's like this beast is kind of, whether it's fully real or not, or exactly the what makes this creature, that's to be left to be found out in the story. But it's like it's a manifest fear that Jin has, that I guess it's kind of like, what if I can't control what my what my powers become? Like what if that gets out of my control, you know?
My personal like thought experiments, like literary theory, is that like magic is something of submission. Science controls things,
Yeah.
and magic is submission. Like magic controls you in a certain way. If you
Yeah.
go too far, if you submit to magic too far.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, for sure. There's a few different kind of takes on it that I find are really interesting. That's a good one though, for sure. Um, yeah, it's the way, yeah, I think it goes back to like when I was a kid, I used to read Teen Titans, and Kid Flash would use his Speed Force powers or whatever, but it's like every time he used it, he would come closer to dying basically. And I was like, that's so cool, you know? So it just kind of limits this power that could potentially just allow him to solve any problem. Like he can't, you know. So yeah, I think that was the seed when I was a little kid to start that off. But that's my take on it for this one. But yeah, there's a few different interesting ways to approach, like, what rules do I set in this magic? The submission thing is great though, because that is what it is for sure. If there's a real thing, that is what you got to do. That's what starts it off. It's just submitting to its power, I guess.
Another nifty tool you have as a storyteller with Kaya is the captions. You know, your Jin is telling the story from some point in the future. And we are also now getting issues like 19, where we jump into the future. We meet Kaya the Buccaneer, a more adult Kaya. And I've been reading interviews with you and reading the tea leaves as well. And it seems like this current storyline that we're getting into, which will make up the fourth trade paperback, will play with time a little bit. Can you talk about setting the narrative? You're having a narrator in the far future or some future, and then
Yeah.
also now meeting Kaya of the future.
And also, does it have anything to do with is time being a flat circle?
uh Not really, but it's yeah, definitely not that actually. But like, but yeah, the narration for Jin started almost like uh really, it sounds strange, but like when I was a kid, again, going back to some of the stuff that I thought was really cool when I was a kid, was like Stand By Me and The Wonder Years. And it's like these 1960s, 50s stories, and it's told from the point of view of the adult version, and they look back on their lives as a child. And funny enough, like Saga is kind of that too, where it's like the
Yeah.
old version looking back on herself as a child. It's a good way to kind of lay some fun little seeds of like you plant a little thing of like, oh, I didn't know this bad thing was going to happen, and then the reader goes, oh, what's going to happen there? And so it's like, I it's a tricky one because I don't want to give anything away about exactly how old Jin, how it turns out for Jin, etc. He doesn't mention too much about Kaya. He talks about the past mostly, and then maybe he'll drop one or two little kind of ominous little hints about where it might go. Um, but I just think it's a fun way of looking back on your childhood years. I think it's really like I just think you get a lot out of it. I enjoy those. Those are tough because they're pretty text heavy and stuff, but like I have a lot of fun with doing that one.
I
Getting the
freaking love it. But like to me, then when we get to 19 and we meet Kaya the Buccaneer, like that suddenly makes it adds like a dangerous narrative element to it. That's not the right word, but like suddenly the narrative element has a little electricity because now we're touching into the future and the story is being told from the future.
Yeah, it's a little bit, that was like one thing I thought of a little bit when I first started formulating the idea, is she's a little bit like a pint-sized Conan to me. Like she
Yeah.
doesn't talk too much. She's all about action, and she kind of like scoffs at hoity-toity, like people of privilege or whatever. She's kind of like whatever, she kind of rolls her eyes at that kind of stuff because of her upbringing. And same way as Conan does in the original stories. And it's like with those stories, they would jump around through time quite a bit. It's like he's Conan the King. Here, then now we're gonna go back to him being a barbarian. Then we go over here when he's a buck, like same thing. That's why it's Kaya the
Yeah.
Buccaneer, like Conan the Buccaneer, all that kind of stuff. Um, but for me, and Hellboy does the same thing, and I feel like that's also an inspiration from. I know he loves that Robert E. Howard stuff, so it's like maybe that's an inspiration from Conan too, being able to jump through time, till different points in the story. But for me, I was like, I haven't done that yet. That might get out of control. So I think the linear narrative is more the way that I should go. But maybe once in a while, I can just jump forward and just give you little glimpses, and then that'll give you just like Jin's narration, that'll give you some enticing well, where's Jin in this
Yeah.
story?
Yeah.
When he's, that's one of the questions. What's up with her arm? Just raising little, she doesn't have the metal arm anymore. She's got like this wooden arm. So it's like raising questions that make you go, well, what? I don't understand, The one thing is that we are going to jump right back into the main story, like in the next issue, but they're entering this place that's kind of, I like to mesh the sci-fi with the fantasy in the series. So it's like to them, they experience this city as kind of a haunted city of ghosts, but it's got a lot more to do with kind of a broken time travel machine that's just outside of the city limits that just messes with time and has people kind of in a loop trying to be like, oh no, the time machine thing is out of control. Oh no, the time machine is out of control. Like they're just kind of like repeating like looping ghosts or whatever. And in that there's going to be some fun stuff to be able to play with where maybe you might, yeah, don't want to spoil it. You might see some interesting things that relate to issue 19, I'll say.
But if you are planning on an 8 trade paperback series, and now we're getting to trade paperback 4,
Yeah.
usually this is like the Empire Strikes Back moment. I
Yeah,
feel like we should all be really scared with this storyline.
yeah, it's coming. I can't wait. It's gonna be pretty messed up, but there's definitely a big kind of midway point that kind of shakes everything up, and then it'll be interesting to see how things kind of reform from there to kind of slide into the, finish everything off after that. But yeah, there's gonna be, I think, book number 5, I think, is like kind of the big climactic Empire Strikes Back moment, and then afterwards it's more like, okay, so where are we now? And yeah, that's that's kind of it's bringing everything together. The beast that Jin is scared of, and all these elements there. This character Razel that's going to be a big thing in the next book. That Jin kind of also experienced in his it's not dreams really. It's like the dark realm where it's kind of like a, a a realm where anything is possible kind of place. And that he met this crazy beast that he's super scared of, but also this character Razel that helped save him. So all that stuff's going to come to a head pretty much in the next like 2 books.
We've also seen Kaya show up in his dreams. So, like, to me, I'm just going to throw my theory out there and you don't have to react to it. But, like, to me, like, in this dark place, it's your brain. It's like Jin's brain contextualizing something that he cannot understand, So he like, I need to get out of here. What gets me out of places? It's Kaya.
Yeah.
Or I'm afraid of something. There's something dark that I'm really afraid of. Oh, it must be Razel or whoever this person is, I suspect from his past. You know what I mean? So that wasn't what I tapped you to ask, though. What I tapped you to ask was, we have a tap system where when we want to trade questions, we tap each other on the knee. So is this going to be like Star Wars where you have like, okay, this is the saga, but from there, in all kinds of myriad of directions, there is actually an infinite number of Kaya stories?
I don't know how to. There's a definite ending because they have a definite destination that they're trying to get to throughout the series. Things change. Jin and Kaya's thoughts on what that destination means, on whether they want to get there, all these things kind of change and morph through the series. And then there's like, but the climax of that story is the end of this story, like in book number, I'm assuming book number 8, and maybe things could change, or maybe I'd come up with something where I go, oh, it's got to be 7 books or 9 books, but currently right now it's like book number 8 is where I picture it ending. Um, but there's like, you see that she is older, in the flash forward, in this flash forward story of number 19. It's like she is older, so there is potential for like the further adventures of Kai in that world, but I don't think so. But you never know. It's one of those things. It's like it's been living in my head for so long. Again, it might be a little bit like Jeff Smith, where it's like you finish Bone, but it's like it's such a part of your life, and you got other ideas, and these characters are so alive to you that it's like it's hard to just be like, nope, no one's ever gonna hear from you again. Nope, close that door. Like that would be a bit tough, I think, just because I have them figured out, and they are pretty alive to me. So yeah, it does feel kind of like maybe could be future stories to tell, but I'm not really thinking about that right now. I'm just like thinking about like try and get to the finish line of this story, and then worry about that afterwards.
Yeah, I think Lisa and I just need to learn how to enjoy our burrito. This is the story. We're in the middle of it right now. We're having such a great time of it. We want more. We're already worried about the ending.
Well, yeah, you want to like leave people wanting more, and that's a good thing. You don't want to like it's like currently I speaking it's like I love Star Wars, but it's kind of like there's too much, like it's like you become almost jaded where you're like, oh, another Star Wars, where back in the day you go, oh my God, there's another Star Wars coming out. So, like
Right.
there's less of it. So it's a little bit like that. Like leave them wanting more is definitely the way to go.
But here we are on the eve of like the 20th issue coming out. Like 20 issues of Kaya exist already. And there seems to be so much confidence in the story reaching that 8th trade paperback. And yet, you go back to that 19th issue and you're talking to your readers and you're like, hey, guys, you might be trade waiting, or you might know people are trade waiting, but the
Yeah.
single issue is super important for publishers to see that there's an audience here, and that's how we get to the end, is that these single issues get sold.
Yeah. Yeah, I just want to keep it's like one way or the other, the story will be told 100%. Like let's say that just no one bought the issues, it was losing all kinds of money or whatever. It's like I would Kickstarter, I would do whatever. Like that is one thing that like every reader out there does not need to worry about. I will, because also it's not like the artist is going to go off and do something else. Like I am the writer artist. It is going to be done. It's my baby. The story will be completed one way or the other. But I would like to keep it running the way that it's currently running, where it's like single issues, trade paperback, the traditional direct market style, I could do it as just trade paperbacks eventually, but I don't really, I just, yeah, it's the same as I said to start the conversation, is I envision it a certain way. So for better or worse, I just want it to be that way. I just want it to at least, and when that is over, maybe I go, okay, so that was pretty crazy. Maybe I'm not doing monthly comics for the next little while. It is a grind to get this thing out as a writer artist like every month, but I mean, I'm proud of it though. Uh, but yeah, I pictured it being this way, and I'm hoping that it'll right now. Also, like, you don't want to be like, please pick up the comic. Just for me, I don't want to be out there hat in hand. It's like it's doing good. It's getting translated in foreign languages and stuff like that. And so it is doing good, but to just kind of rest on your laurels and think that you don't need to beat the drum, that's just something I do every at the beginning of each arc. I just try to get out and get the word out. It's hard to convince new readers to be like, pick up issue 20 of this series, but hopefully they buy the first 3 trade paperbacks. And we did a little 8-page black and white thing that was a free giveaway for comic shops and stuff, just to, yeah, oh, you got one, nice. Just to catch people up. And it's like I had to make the time between issues to try to do all the text and all the dialogue and have it make. I'm sure there's mistakes in there. I'm sure it's not ideal, but it's like I made the best little tiny pamphlet I could for the time that I gave myself to do that. So yeah, can't rest on your laurels, and you just got to kind of keep beating the PR, the promotional drum to try to just pick up a few readers, and because some are going to fall off, but and hopefully you pick up a few. And it's nice now because it's like the readership for the single issues, it's like every issue drops off a bit for every comic in the whole world, but like it's maintaining like really well. Like it's like, oh, this issue we lost 12 readers or whatever, like it's not like, oh, this issue we lost 200 readers. It's just like this tiny little incremental kind of lowering, but we'll see. Hopefully that sails me through to the end of the end of the book, And I mean, Image has been amazing, and they've been very supportive of it. And I even said one of these things to Eric Stevenson, the publisher of Image, and I'm just like, this is like one of the few long running, like continuing series out there right now that's like creator owned. Like everything's like 5-issue series. I'm like let's just pleading my case basically. And he was like, yeah, and he I think he appreciated that. And he gave me a talk at the beginning where he was saying you got to be monthly, and if you say you're going to be monthly, don't be like come out every 2 months. Like you got to kind of, he's like, Saga is an awesome book, Walking Dead's an awesome book, but also when they said they were going to come out, they came out. It's a little bit different with Saga right now, but I mean, like,
Sure.
you don't add kids, and like life happens, but you do your best to try to make it as steady as you can. Like Walking Dead was like clockwork, and comic shops knew that they could rely on it to be there every month, and it all helps everything. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna try. So I missed things by a week or two here and there, but I've been pretty steady monthly. So it's like I'm happy we managed to make that happen.
Another part of your cry to like, hey, keep reading the single issues was like this desire to create a community around Kaya and really activate Kaya readers to go make more Kaya readers. And you put a call out for the community, like a community name. Like, what should we call ourselves? Us people who are fans of Kaya. Do we have any headway on that mission? Do we have any front runners for what that should be?
No, I'm not sure. No.
I don't have any ideas. I was like, Kayas?
Oh, I thought you were gonna
That
have
sounds
an
weird.
idea.
Oh, I wish. We just got back from SGCC. I have nothing in me but Diet Coke right now.
Yeah,
like, that's
sure.
it.
Yeah. The letters column is Kyalog. I thought that was pretty
That's
fun.
very fun, yes.
And but no, in terms of the the like the Deadheads or the whatever, whatever, pick your band or your favorite comic or your favorite whatever, cheese heads. Kaya heads. I don't know. It's got to be alliterative or something like that. I got to work on that. I got to workshop that a little bit more.
Now I'm thinking, but I'm not gonna come up with a good answer.
Though maybe we'll just edit in some great ideas later.
Yeah, drop me a line. Feel free. Anybody listening to it, blackhandcomics@gmail.com. If you want to send an idea, go ahead.
Wes, thank you so much for chatting with us today about Kaya.
We love it so much.
We were those readers, though. We read like the first batch of issues, and then we went to trade, and then we had to catch up for this conversation. It's like, no, we're back on single issues. So that's exciting for us personally.
Nice. Thank you, Mir. I appreciate it for sure. I'd like to stack it with more stuff every issue. I love every issue to be like, the in-between arcs where I put back matter. I'd love to be able to do that, but it's very time consuming, and it's tough to keep the deadlines in line, and also find, write a text piece and write a this and then so yeah. Maybe I'll find a way to make that work one day, but so far I haven't found a way. But yeah, I appreciate the support, really.
It's a double-edged sword because I love back matter. I just love it. I always read it. I'm so always excited to see it. But at the same time, I go like, but there could be story on these pages.
Yeah,
like,
well, that's what
it's
I try
hard.
to do. Literally, like sometimes the last story page is like the inside back page of the comic. So I'm like, I am jamming this as much. There's no ads, there's no nothing. It's just like all Kaya, like right to the last page. So yeah, hopefully that's appreciated, I guess.
All right, listeners, hit up your comic book shop this Wednesday. Kaya 20 is out. The little pamphlet giving you like some catch up on Kaya is there. You could just take those two things and get rocking.
Thank you.
Okay, first thing we need to talk about is that ever since I said get rockin' to Wes Craig, Lisa has been mocking me incessantly.
It's because it's not the first time you said rock and roll to someone, and it was so weird. You did it in San Diego. If you were the person Brad said rock and roll to, reveal yourself, because I don't recognize you when you speak that way.
I think the reason I said get rockin' and why I told that person to rock and roll is because I've been reading Kaya.
Yeah.
And that's what Kaya says, and I want to be cool like Kaya.
Who doesn't?
One of my favorite things that I took out of that conversation is when Wes Craig is discussing the chosen one trope, and he's talking about his influence from Dune. Even though he doesn't necessarily see a lot of influence of Dune in Kaya, he can't deny that Dune influence. But this idea that when you accept the chosen one idea, when you buy into a chosen one concept, like I am the person to lead us out of the desert, you are having one of those transformative decision moments, something that we've been talking about a lot on the podcast this past year. You can't anticipate the consequences of those choices. Choices that you make, but also choices that are thrust upon you. And the real story isn't actually the chosen one side of things. It's how the characters react to those transformative decisions that's actually interesting.
Having a chosen one sucks. It sucks for everyone who's around the chosen one, because all of a sudden they are putting aside their needs, they're making sacrifice plays, they're compromising their morals for this other person or their priorities or their principles or whatever. And then when you are the chosen one, that also sucks, because then all of these expectations are put upon you. You have no autonomy. And of course, autonomy is the tether to happiness in your life, the ability to make choices. And like, I've been thinking a lot about it because of the Ninja Turtles and the conversation that we had with Jason Aaron and all of that stuff of like, you know, the Ninja Turtles would have had a lot better life if they didn't have the burden of having to get revenge for the Hamato clan and having to kill the Shredder and the Shredder never dying.
Right.
The fact that they can never change their course until that one thing is done makes them flippin' miserable. And now Jin is in this place where he believed in the prophecy, right? He believed in it. And then he saw what the prophecy was going to cost him, or he saw himself doing the prophecy wrong, and now all of a sudden he's paralyzed with fear.
Well, and he also started to consider, well, Kaya was told that she was the
also
chosen
the
one.
chosen one, yeah.
And Mom was wrong about her. Could Mom be wrong about me?
Yeah.
And then that's the seed of doubt, just as he's becoming something more.
That's such an important point in life, too. That when you realize, oh my goodness, my parents don't know what they're doing. You know, they're just my peers now, making mistakes and having bad takes. And there
might be magic out in the world, but all us humans are interpreting it differently.
Yeah.
You know, and messing it up and getting it wrong.
And stomping on each other's toes and maybe ruining this planet and
so,
our society.
You know, issue 20 dropped today. We're now on the Dragon Road. Things look like they're going to be getting way more complicated for Kaya and Jin. And we've now seen into the future of Kaya's life as the Buccaneer.
And she's got a different arm. And where the F is Jin?
Yeah, so we have a lot of questions right now. I guess we're almost at the halfway point if Wes Craig's plans go accordingly.
Yeah,
it's super exciting.
It is exciting.
Super exciting. So, yeah, the Carbonite is coming.
That Han Solo stuff?
Yeah, Empire Strikes Back, dark cliffhanger is in our near future.
Yes.
And I'm so excited to get there. But we got to wait, and we got to enjoy our burrito we're eating it.
Yeah. So should we do our plugs?
Yeah, like we said in the intro, this Friday is our next episode. We're talking to Joey Esposito and Sean Von Gorman about The Pedestrian, a new kind of superhero, and we mean that. It's kind of incredible, but it's true. And then on Monday, we're going to bring more San Diego Comic-Con conversations to you. We're going all in with DC. We're talking to Mark Waid and Mariko Tamaki, Tom King and Daniel Sapare, Joshua Williamson, and Lisa.
Yeah?
Who'd we talk to at the Dark Horse booth?
We talked to James Tynan IV about Christopher Chaos and like all things Tiny Onion.
Yeah, and that conversation goes places.
Yeah, he's a businessman now.
He really is. Room service. We talk room service.
Then we have Heather Antos and Ryan North talking about Star Trek Lower Decks, the comic, and then our new favorite find, J.P. Onen on Beelzebubs.
Beelzebubs.
From Top Shelf.
So good. Calvin and Hobbes, but metal.
And hopefully you've already gotten your tickets to see Atomic Blonde with us and Four Color Fantasies at the Alamo Drafthouse Winchester for Brad's birthday,
Yeah.
August 18th
Yeah.
at 4 o'clock.
Yeah, my birthday.
You could bring him a gift. He wouldn't turn it down.
I'll tell you what, though, if you're a Comic Book Couples Counseling patron, you get in for free. We will buy that ticket for you. You just got to let us know. And if you're a Comic Book Couples Counseling patron, you already have access to all the interviews that we did at San Diego Comic-Con.
That's right.
Link in the show notes.
Link in the show notes.
Stop mocking me.
Where can our listeners send their words of affirmation to you?
You can find me on most social medias at MouthDork. If you have words of affirmation for our logo, you can send them to Aaron Prescott at A Cool Hand Fluke. And if you have some words of affirmation for our radical banner art and show posters, send them to Karen Chapp at Karen_X-Men fan. Lisa, where can our listeners send their words of affirmation to you?
I'm always accepting words of affirmation at Sidewalk Siren on Instagram and Twitter. If you'd like to spend more quality time with us, you can subscribe to us on Podbean, Spotify, YouTube, Audible, Apple Podcasts, or whatever app you choose. We're everywhere. If you'd like to get exclusive, you can join our Patreon, where you'll get more content, including weekly bonus episodes.
So many interviews, so many interviews. If you'd like to reach out and touch us electronically, you can email the podcast, cbccpodcast@gmail.com. You can visit our website, comicbookcouplescounseling.com, or follow us on all the socials at CBCC Podcast.
You can give us the gift of 5 stars on Audible or Apple Podcasts. And if you'd like to do an act of service, why not write a review of the show while you're there?
Yes, please.
We're fluent and receptive in all 5 love languages. It really warms our hearts and helps the pod.
So until next time, friends, keep your love tank full.
And your psychic rapport open. That was dumb.
Leave the singing to the stinger, Lisa.
Oh no. Doopy doopy. Link in the show notes.
Link in the show notes.
This is our show notes song.
Show notes song.
This is our show notes
song.
Yeah.
We watched the Game Changers
Episode where they were
improvising, singing and singing. And
I
it
loved
was a
it
lot
so
of fun.
much. It made me cry.
Yeah.
Where can our listeners send their words of affirmation to you?
You can find me on most social medias at MouthDork. If you have words of affirmation for our logo, you can send them to Aaron Prescott at A Cool Hand Fluke. And if you have some words of affirmation for our radical banner art and show poster, send them to Karen Jeff.
You're a man now. What is that Brady kid?
Greg Brady.